a split personality character or a multiple personality character, also known in psychology as someone with dissociative identity disorder or DID, is a character who shifts between one or more personalities against their own will. This is not the same as Batman and Superman, who switch between their alter egos at any time of their choice. Split personality characters are usually unwillingly divided, and they are unable to control or even remember the actions of their other personalities. A classic example of this would be Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. In the story of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll creates a potion that splits his dark personality from his normal personality, and eventually the dark side takes over him completely. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote this book in 1886, and ever since there have been many split personality characters in movies, dramas, books, and video games. Today we'll be looking at some split personality characters with some help from Fritz of Cinderella Phenomenon and Dewey of Star-Crossed Myth, as well as some insights from our friend Carl Jung. If you don't know any of these names, don't worry, you can still get a lot out of this video if you are an author or storyteller that is trying to write a split personality character. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you are interested in learning about more different types of characters on Automate Author, my channel where we talk about the art of storytelling with the use of video games. There are 4 elements that make up a split personality character in fiction. 1 is a trigger for the shift between personalities. 2 is a reason for the trigger and the shift. 3 are clear, separate, and distinct personalities that are still rooted in the main personality of the individual. And 4, a remedy for the split. So first, let's look at some triggers that can cause the personalities to shift. In Cinderella Phenomenon, the royal guard, Fritz, switches between personalities when it is night and day. In Star-Crossed Myth, Dewey switches between personalities whenever he sees something that resembles blood. In the beginning of our story, both characters have a clear and distinct reason to shift between personalities that becomes more and more unstable as the story progresses. So first, as a storyteller, we need to decide what the reason for this split personality's existence is in the first place. Real DID patients usually have a history of something traumatic happening to them, such as war or an accident or abuse or even a natural disaster. So it can be internal in factor or it can be external in factor. In Star-Crossed Myth, it takes an internal approach as we find out that Dewey's split personality is due to his trauma of murdering his own friend. He ends up creating an alter ego to shoulder the shame and guilt that Dewey has for doing such a crime. Cinderella Phenomenon, on the other hand, takes an external approach. Fritz doesn't have any trauma, however, he has been cursed by a witch. The dark side hidden within his own soul is murderous enough to help the witch with his goals, and so Fritz's dark side is used as a weapon. So we see that these dark sides are actually part of the individual. Carl Jung talks about this in his book Aion, researches into the phenomenology of the self. In accordance to Jung, everyone has 4 components of their personality. 1 is the ego, known as the acts of consciousness. The second is the shadow, which is the dark unconsciousness of the personality. Third is the animus and the anima, which is the masculine and feminine parts of the personality. And last is the persona, or how we project ourselves into the world. Jung has a lot of theories and ideas about these different parts, and I don't want to get too sidetracked because I could really nerd out on this entire concept for quite a while. What I want to focus on is how the dark and light interact and coexist together. So the ego and the persona are the conscious selves of the self. Ego just means consciousness in Jungian theories. There are some Freudian theories about ego, id, and super id, but I'm just going to stick with Jung for now. So the ego is how we interact with the world and what we are aware of. Persona is how we project ourselves into the world, the image that we want people to see. Both of these are fully conscious. We are the ones in control of these. On the other side, you have the anima animus and the shadow. The shadow is our dark side of our consciousness. However, it's not always completely evil. The shadow is actually an accumulation of the things we have repressed, including unacceptable or inappropriate thoughts, desires, or behaviors. Jung explains that the shadow is unconscious, but it can be made conscious at some level, not completely. He says that it can never be fully conscious because it's far too dark, and those who tap into it usually end up in his words, neurotic. And the fact of the matter is a lot of people don't like to tap into the shadow of their consciousness. Mary Midgley, in her book Wickedness, talks about how people usually avoid thinking about things that would not allow them to do what they want. So what people normally do is they assign the term evil to some external force and not an inward problem, because if they identified it as an inward problem, then they would have to stop doing the things that are evil, even the ones that they enjoy. So many people don't really think about their dark sides and they shove them down, creating the shadow. And this is part of the connection of creating a split personality character. The dark side is usually more or less an accumulation of feelings and desires that the individual does not want to face. Now, according to Jung, the anima animus is a mediator between the conscious and the unconscious. And anima animus just means the masculine and feminine balance in the human personality. The anima and animus help the unconscious and the conscious balance out and fuse together. So a great way to use the anima and animus in fiction is to create a masculine or feminine balance outside as a character. Use outside characters such as the romantic interest or friends or family that represent this anima or animus and act as a mediator to fuse the multiple personalities back together. Now, real DID requires therapy in order for the individual to fuse their personalities back together. However, in fiction, we're not going to have any of the personalities go to therapists because that would make for a really boring story. So instead, it's better to use outside characters and outside events that challenge the beliefs and morality of that split personality character, ultimately making them face the root of their split and eventually coming back together. At least in the happy ending sense. You can make a sad ending sense where the dark takes over the light, or they stay split completely for eternity. That's your choice as the storyteller. But we're gonna look at a happy ending arc for this video. So Fritz is the royal guard to Princess Lucette in Cinderella Phenomenon. His life mission is just to protect the princess. And eventually he falls in love with her. So this life goal and this deep love ends up dripping into the dark side of his personality. After all, the dark side of his personality is rooted in Fritz. So when the princess's life becomes endangered, even by his own actions, the characters silently agree on their own terms individually that they will not do anything against Princess Lucette. This is what eventually helps them merge back together. Dewey's split personality is actually similar. However, Dewey's dark side is created to protect Dewey. So when Dewey decides that he wants to extinguish his own life, his dark side actually comes out and doesn't allow him to do so. In order to protect Dewey, which is the dark side's one mission and one goal, they have to find a way to fuse back together. So you need to think about the beliefs and the mission of both the individual and the dark side. It may turn out to be the same mission, or it may turn out to be different missions that eventually leads to their reconciliation. There are three other things that I would ask you to consider while making one of these characters. First are the physical symptoms of DID. So real DID and character DID in fiction comes with the side effects of memory lapses and complete amnesia. Each personality actually doesn't remember what the other personality has done, and they usually have to ask one of the outside characters what happened. They also have a lot of mood swings and self-persecution and other physical symptoms like headaches and seizures and sleep disorders. You won't need to use all of these symptoms, but it's helpful to sprinkle in a few that are suitable for the story. A second thing to think about are counterattacks to this dark side. Now, you will have the eventual remedy in the end of the story. However, there are usually counterattacks that outside characters can use to fend off these extra personalities. In Cinderella Phenomenon, Lucette uses the word aduva, as it was a secret word that Fritz taught her whenever she was in trouble. In Star-Crossed Myth, Dewey's dark side shifts back into his regular self whenever he sees a mirror. So think of some counterattacks that your outside characters can use to defend themselves in the story. And lastly, it's good to think about how the different personalities have different beliefs and worldviews. How do they see the world? How do they see each other? In both Star-Crossed Myth and Cinderella Phenomenon, the dark egos consider the regular personality too weak to handle the grief and negative emotions that comes with their lives. If the good side could handle the darkness of the world and of their own hearts, these dark alter egos would not need to exist. Our own personalities, even without any form of DID, also shift between between optimism and pessimism, between hopelessness and hope. These kind of characters in fiction are a representation of that, giving us a chance to reflect on the dark and light parts of our own soul and consider whether or not the dark side is taking us over. As it's best for our characters to fuse their light and dark sides together in order to reach their highest potential, the audience is also encouraged to do the same. So tell me, what is a split personality character in fiction that you know, and what makes them interesting to you? If this was interesting or helpful in any way, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe for more videos about different character types and tropes. What kind of character or trope would you like me to analyze next? Let me know in the comments. So until the next video, I will see you tigers later. Keep being beautiful beasts, and peace.